Rowan, I'll go to you. Then obviously Christian. Where are you at with Lexie Brown and Zia Cooke again? Understanding the sample size is small, but that could be a thing you talk about. Is does we need how soon do we need to start seeing more of a leash for them, you could say, just because yeah, you talk about space on the floor a little bit more. I think Lexi took 2 shots last night in that Minnesota game, and they were both threes, and they were both misses. So I don't know. Where are you at with those two? Just because I think it's, you want to be like, oh, they haven't done anything, but also they haven't gotten hardly any minutes.
Right. I mean, it is really hard to look. I'm looking right now. Lexi has 10 plus 1, 11, 16, like 20 total minutes on the season. And just looking at the box, I mean, I don't know if I really realized this until I'm looking at it just now. She still has not scored in the regular season at all. She has, turnovers, the steals and the assists, she has some things in that category. So there's definitely in the limited minutes she's getting, there's something on the stat sheet, but I think the biggest thing for me, like I mentioned, just going into this season, what was maybe presented to us is it looks very different and it's still being effective. However, it's just interesting to look and see that what was presented to us was that, Lexi Brown is here to shoot threes and she's going to be, the remedy to the shooting problem. And that has not been what has happened yet. I don't particularly remember any emphasis on her defense. It felt like a lot of it was an emphasis on her offense when, again, when it was being presented after the trade was made. Yes, exactly. Um, and so it's interesting to see that isn't what has been what has been happening. And again, you're not going to sub Gabby out when she's your best three-point shooter just to throw Lexi Brown in there to see if she will make anything, especially when she's had attempts. If there weren't attempts, maybe I'd be feeling a little bit differently, but she's 0 for 4 from 3 so far in these first 4 games, which, wouldn't be a huge deal, but in the limited minutes, there hasn't been much to show there. So I think that with her, and like you mentioned, on this veteran team, she needs to be getting more of those minutes. However, it's really hard to do that when you're either close when you're in a Minnesota game where, you get close, you're not going to throw in, someone that hasn't been producing, particularly well. I think with Zia Cooke, I think it's been really interesting to see her. I know Christian mentioned that, in the game yesterday, she was brought in, to really just for her defensive abilities. And, we know that Noelle, she did mention that when Zia Cooke was being presented to us, that was a really big point of emphasis. And so I'm seeing that being super effective. But I think that you bring up a good point of that the defense is great and that's helpful. You see that Lexi Brown has a few rebounds here and there, a few steals, but will the starters be able to continue how they're doing offensively without needing to take some breaks? And if they are needing to, I mean, we know that they will need to take some breaks. It's a long season. We're seeing, Skylar Diggins, we're seeing Nneka Ogwumike at their full potential right now. And as the season goes on, you get tired. So that definitely is a concern. And I think that really right now, Erica Wheeler is kind of saving the Storm's butt a little bit because, she's coming off the bench and, offensively producing, which was an issue last year as well, of that, there wasn't really a lot off the bench, maybe one or two people. So I think at this point in the season, I'm not going to make any snap judgments. Again, Lexi Brown, has not had as many reps in in WNBA games in a while. And I appreciate that, like we were talking about with playing time before, I could have seen last season it being that she, plays these 10 minutes in the first Phoenix game with really nothing to show for it, and we don't see her again. So, we still have like, around 5 minutes these past 2 games that she's been playing. So I think she's had some chances to show that. And I think that if they continue to play her at those minutes, I don't know when you say, okay, we've tried it and this isn't working, and how you get her to start producing better offensively. But Zia Cooke on the plus side has been great defensively. Offensively, I think that she was marketed as going to be doing a little bit more, and we haven't seen that, but it's been okay at this point. And just to touch on Erica Wheeler too, I think that with the starting lineup, I mean, you see that at least against Minnesota and against Phoenix, I'd have to go back and look at Vegas. Both of those games, she's being subbed in within 5 minutes of the game starting. And you also see that in those first 5 minutes, those were the 5 minutes that Minnesota went on their run. The turnovers were just, crazy. And so it's kind of that thing you have to balance. Does Noelle want to come out of the gate with defense or offense? Because Erica Wheeler is bringing that offensive spark. And if it keeps being a thing that they are continuing to struggle at the beginning instead of struggling in the third quarter, maybe you do, maybe that is when you start Erica Wheeler to start out a little bit stronger offensively. But I agree that 5 games in, it's great to see. It's been helpful to have her, producing offensively, but I'm not sure if it's really the right time to start her yet. And I think that we need to see if she'll withstand a few more tests before that.
Yeah, first off, you don't see the floor in Columbia, South Carolina if you don't play defense. It's really that simple. A lot of people say Dawn doesn't produce guards. I can think of a couple in the league right now. I can think of one that's an MVP candidate down in the A right now in Atlanta. Her name is Alicia Gray. But as far as Zia Cooke, she comes from that crop. She does defense, offense. I meant to ask yesterday how because this team does keep track of deflections. How many deflections does Lexie have? Not Lexie. Um, does I have? Because I felt like she had at least four last night. Because she came into the game, I think she had two in the third, if I'm not mistaken. Because I remember it was just like, okay, Kayla McBride's asked for a foul. No, sorry, that's just defense. I mean, that's what Minnesota was doing the entire first quarter. I mean, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, it's just, the tide's turning, clearly. But yeah, Zia has been amazing to start the season. She's been doing exactly what people have thought. She's playing defense. She's coming in. It may not show up on the stat sheet, but she is actively cutting towards the rim, and that does create other opportunities for other people on the wing or other people on the side of the floor. So she's doing the little things. I do think again the minute increase will come eventually because like Rowan said, players do get tired. You're gonna have to go into that bench, and like I said before the season even started, this is one of the best benches that Seattle's had in a while, talent wise, name recognition in general. Um, we don't have to worry about the post anymore. Besides, NECA and Gabby. I mean, NECA and Ezzy. I mean, that was kind of a big thing. If one of them isn't on the floor, they look kind of bad. I mean, in no disrespect to Mercedes Russell or any of the other bigs on the roster, they just couldn't really fill the gap. And it's such a large disparity between talent. You don't really have that. I mean, Dom comes in and she's an instant force. May not get the block, but teams are thinking twice about going directly at her. I mean, but she's kind of tall. She has a really long wingspan. See, I got it. Not arm span this time, it's wingspan. See, but yeah, they're not really worried about things like that. But all in all, the bench is probably it's exactly where I think it should be at this point in the season. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed about the bench in its production is the fact that there are no third quarter swells anymore. They come out of the locker room, like especially like last night, there were like two to different stretches in the third and the fourth, I believe, where Seattle had 5 to 7 straight scoring possessions. That just comes from continuity, working together, and understanding the goal at hand, and people playing their roles. You couldn't say that this time last year. The Lynx game was pretty bad last year. I mean, they didn't look. The final score may have been 13, but you guys watched it. It was a lot worse than what it looked like. I can't remember what the halftime score, but I'm pretty sure they were down by at least double digits going into 20. But this game, again, it's a loss, but everything you need to see against a team like Minnesota, there's levels to this. I understand that the Aces may not be the Aces of old, but they are still an Asia Wilson powered Aces team. And they could have, they combated back, as far as they could until, Seattle just kind of ran away with it at the end of the day. But the Aces, and then you have Minnesota. Pretty soon you go play the New York Liberty. These are games that you like. Noe said against the Aces. These are kind of bench tests. A benchmark test throughout the season to see where you are really competing. And so far, I mean, it looked good. You got your look back against Phoenix. That's I think that's all that they really cared about, especially against opening season like that. But yeah, 3-2, it may look like, oh man, man, like normal stretch of the road type of record, but it's not. And everything that goes It's exactly what we need to see from the bench.
I was just gonna say too, I mean, I'm interested, as you said, you're looking at the bench minutes. I would say Lexie at this point is the only one that doesn't feel like is necessarily living up to what, to the time that she is on the court at this point. But again, like, we're easing into it. But it is interesting to think about, you obviously want to win games. And like I said before, when do you say it's the beginning of the season, we're seeing Zia Cooke, Lee Yuru, we're seeing them come off the bench and really use the most of their minutes. Is that when you try them out a bit more to kind of get those reps in before you get deep into the season? And, I do worry about the amount that Gabby is playing, the amount that, that all of the starters are playing. And I think, like you said, last year there was a reliance on the starters that at this point, obviously we haven't seen, you know, Zia Cooke play 30 minutes. At this point in the season, we're not really asking for that. But I do think it's interesting. I think if you want to start ramping those minutes up, you really should when you're seeing good things from the bench. So I'm interested to see, in this upcoming game against, an Atlanta team that is a higher, sorry, don't want to get ahead, but that is higher in the standings. I'm just interested to see, I mean, every team in this league, it's not, maybe if you're a Connecticut, it's hard to, see a game and say, oh, this is going to be like our practice game. But,
That's crazy shade in Connecticut.
Sorry.
They have great pizza. That's crazy, man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just saying that I'm just saying that, you have, like every team it felt like was this thing of, oh, this team is all new. It's not gonna go well. You look at a Phoenix and, you look at, whoever else, but there aren't a lot of practice games that you get. And so I think that, you're not really going to have an opportunity to just have a let's play our bench the whole 40 minutes kind of game, or, let's just try it out. And so I'd really like to see those minutes for, Zia Cooke, like start ramping up a little bit because I get concerned about the end of the season.
Yeah, as far as yeah, I mean BG from what I remember, with the last report that I saw, she's day to day, so she's probably going to play on Friday. That's going to be another test. Atlanta is really good. Like I said, Alicia Grace looking like an MVP candidate right now, but again, Seattle has two of those. Got two of them things. But that's going to be a great game. It'll be from top to bottom. Ryan Howard is looking like kind of the one of the best versions of herself. I understand the production that isn't really there in the same fashion that it is as the last couple of years of her career. But when you got Alicia Gray, you've got Bree Jones, you've got Brittany Griner, you've got ample great players off the bench. You got Nas Hillman, who I keep saying that people don't understand the Australian leagues, the NWL over there, the WNBL. It is probably one of the best offseason leagues for players, especially that's looking to improve their game, come back from the W. And Nas Hillman has hit so many crucial shots already, especially from beyond the arc. Like the game the other day, Ryan passing up that three and giving it to Nas instead to increase that lead that going down the stretch. That shows a lot of growth in her game. Her defense is looking the best that I've ever seen it. She's looking fluid. She's looking great. So again, that's going to be a couple challenges for Seattle. But again, Seattle they have a lot of weapons themselves. I mean, like Coach always says, you got to guard them too. So it's going to be a great game, top and down the bottom of the roster.
That leads me perfectly into your two MVP candidates because
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, were you going to watch the Seattle Storm away games this year?
Away games. Well, Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, so I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See you all here.